Alright, time for Fullest House, first edition, where we are playing Vaettiheim. It is turn 44. Quite a few things going on, attacking some independents, wasting some nature gems. We finished research in blood magic, level 6, so yeah, we've talked about that. Conjuration, there's a couple useful diversity spells in here at level 6, but mostly we want those Great Eagles. Teleporting our lesser horror casters. Speaking of lesser horrors, I think that's what this is going to be. So yeah, this is exactly the spell, that Marignon is already using. Just continuing to harass this army. I don't know. It's a pretty cheap spell, so, it's like, sure, maybe, I guess. And then, we talked about how, you never know when you get lucky with the rocks. But I don't think that did too much. Let's take a look. Right? These guys are, well, actually, they're kind of expensive for regular units, but I think that the merfolk can handle that. But you never know. Sometimes it's just about sending a message. So our site searching does not work out this turn. This is the late age after all. But since it's the late age, plenty of blood hunting going on. This is starting to look a little better. We're still not quite to the horrible levels that we're going to need, but we're getting there. And then, we have some battles, so a lot of which it looks like we're getting attacked, which is less than ideal. So Gath is attacking Patala, so it looks like they're, at least planning on providing, some pressure. Are these like all thugs? Yeah, it does look like it. These are super heavily kitted, but pretty low magic resistance. Yeah, across the board, magic resistance 16. Doesn't really look like there's any magic resistance. Okay, this one's got 20, so one of them is going to be a bit tough to get rid of, because we'll probably, for us dealing with this would be like a soul slay situation or maybe a charm situation. So yeah, this is super overkill for the province defense, although there are definitely some Patalan raiders running around, so maybe he was thinking he was going to bump into them. And we're going to have to be careful that our army is ready to take these ladies out, because we are planning on going after Patala, and maybe Gath is planning on doing both things and I just misinterpreted their statement, but it really did sound like they may just sit on the capital, which would kind of be okay, but I don't think that would be enough. So yeah, really not sure what their intentions are there, but like I said, my patience has run out, so if we have to kill those thugs as well in a bump, I am fine with that. And then, we get raided. I think this is one of the places... Oh no, okay, this is where we just have the province defense. And these guys are going to hold. He is going to get body ethereal on himself, but this is enough knights. Yep, there we go. And that's the only leadership, I thought. No, dang it, he has a commander. That is sad. So I think this is going to work out for him. It's possible that we kill the commander as well. No. So it looks like, this is a decent amount of gold to be losing. And again, we talk all the time about, don't leave unsupported province defense. And then lo and behold, here's some unsupported province defense from Trudanus. But that's how it goes sometimes. But with that sage gone, man, those hoplites, I was really expecting some more casualties. What the heck? We had 25 crossbowmen, I wasn't expecting to win, but one casualty? What is going on here, guys? I'm really did not provide enough respect for these guys. It might be the recuperation. I've talked before, I feel like a lot of people, myself included, undervalue recuperation, right? And because a lot of times, there's a lot going on in Dominions games, and pretty quickly you realize that you just don't really have enough. It's just not worth it usually to pay too much attention to the afflictions and stuff that your line troops are gaining. Some people I know, do shuffle afflicted units out, but I think most people, it's just, once you're in the army, you're in the army. Good luck. But all the afflictions do stack up and do actually represent a fairly significant combat loss, right? So the more that a group fights, it just tends to attrit out. But these guys are just not attritting out, right? So it's okay, they're taking damage, but it's they're because they have recuperation, they're completely fine over and over again, right? So they're taking damage because their protection, is not that great. 16 is good, but especially for the late age, against crossbows, the formation fighter is nice. I guess, they just have a lot of experience too, and better than normal hit points. So, Satyr Hoplites, who knew? Clearly not me. So, we've talked about this group. We at least got the Sage, so for whatever that's worth. Now there truly is only one commander for this group. But yeah, this group has really been the bane of my existence. And then, yeah, Pangaea is attacking out in their capital just with their casters, right? It was pretty much all that they have left. So this is somewhat bold, but they correctly guessed that, who is this? This is such a weird, yeah, this is Vaettiheim just left a mercenary group here, because I'm like, this is not what Vaettiheim normally can recruit. So like, yeah, I think this definitely works out for Pangaea, and they've unlocked their capital, which is not good for us. And here's a Howl and an Air Elemental. Yeah, that's the other thing. There could be a bunch of Air Elementals in our future in Abyssia, and that's a little on the scary side for us. I'm not really used to Pangaea, having a bunch of air. Well, they don't have a bunch of air, but they have air with Astral, so they can communion it together. And so, like, yeah, that's kind of a late age thing. And here's Satyr. They're looking to lock down Atlantis' capital, and Atlantis chose to abandon their PD. They probably just don't have the forces. They'd rather use the walls, and I think that's probably wise considering all these chariots and everything. Although, yeah, I do feel like a castle defense against Wailing Winds is like always dangerous. This does at least trigger gem usage, it looks like, which is very sad for Satyr, because this looks like a lot of gems being used. But like, yeah, this is looking pretty scary, and I don't think Atlantis is long for this world, but we kind of already knew that. And then I believe this is our fight against the vampires. Yeah, it's looking like it, so we'll see. This is a fair amount of stuff to be committing. Okay, I mean, there's fewer vampires here than I remember. I don't know, we'll see. We do manage to get the bugs out. That turn 1 is really important, because, yeah, here they come. And then, yeah, there's the Ravenous Swarm. So hopefully that doesn't eat our undead caster. Probably it will. But, we'll see. This is looking like it's going pretty well. I probably overestimated these vampires. And yeah, then they're routing. So let's see, maybe we managed to get somebody, because we did have some Hellbind Heart going off. No, I don't see any -1 casualties, so we didn't manage to snag anyone. And of course, yeah, the White Hag does die. Not 100% sure that was Ravenous Swarm, but probably. So a bit on the expensive side. It would have been relatively clean in terms of losses had I managed to filter out the undead unit. But of course, this is, a significant amount of mages to be mobilizing. But, then again, 13 vampires and a vampire count. If you don't have the right kind of thug, that can definitely be a problem. We don't really have much in the way of thugs to speak of. We do have our little Veti Goads, but, I don't think they could handle a bunch of vampires. And this is Marignon's Pretender. Maybe, nope, just raiding back a province. Interesting. Yeah, not sure. And he's got some friends here, too. This is possibly also Hellbind Heart, because this is a penetration item, and he's been given a blood booster. So, like, yeah, maybe... Oh, you know what? He's probably trying to catch a Flagrant Thug. That's what I bet this is. But, yeah, it looks like he missed, which, yeah, I mean, that's how it goes. I haven't been able to catch my raiders either. But yeah, there's no province defense being left by Pangaea, so we just take that province back. And then it looks like there is some province defense here, but I don't think it's going to matter. Yeah, just one province defense. This is what we're going to use as the core of our army against Vaettiheim and or possibly Pangaea proper, since now they've unlocked their capital. And then it looks like we caught another battle in this ongoing war between the Merfolk and Marignon. And this looks like, yeah, just a pretty standard raid. No bodyguards on that commander, but then again, like, this is definitely a force that they don't really care if they lose too much. But there's no province defense here. This is probably a province, I'm guessing, that was raided by one of those lesser horror attacks, or send lesser horror. And so, like, yeah, now the Marrow are just, sending relatively cheap groups around to recapture them. And then we have some unexpected events, which I'm sure will all be great. Like if famine comes plague. Actually, relatively light population losses considering. We lose some province defense. This hurts. This definitely does add up. Misfortune 3, like, I don't know. I'm still back and forth. Misfortune 3, to me, doesn't feel that different than Misfortune 2. We do seem to have gotten more vampires, but I think some of that is just luck of the draw. But my suspicion is that you get like more of these events with Misfortune 3, but I haven't really tracked it closely enough. But definitely always sad to be seeing this, and this is a drag like long term, so it's not free. Speaking of not being free, there's a false prophet in our capital. Luckily, we're patrolling our capital, so just another reason that it's useful to have patrollers, especially if you've gone misfortune. Hey, and we found the lair of a troll, which, was not the most impressive haul, but at least we're gaining gems instead of losing them. And then a worldwide event. There's the deathmatch competition. We did not send anyone. So let's take a look. It looks like, yeah, there's quite a few participants. I really do need to be better about this because there's just some joy in like sending people in, although this is an interesting build, actually. I thought that this was just more of a suicidal thing. I'm not really sure about the Ranger's boots, because I don't think any of this is really going to be relevant. But the black bow is definitely really scary. So if he runs into a super combatant that doesn't really have a lot of protection and is a mage, like that's definitely going to suck. And then nice. This is probably about right, like what you should be sending to the arena. A lot of this is like cheap gear or maybe even just like random gear that they got through events, and the lumber construct they probably also got through events. So like, attack 14, 25 damage. Like if he closes, he's got some protection. Like, yeah, I think this guy's actually going to be fine. And he doesn't really care about the black bow. And this guy's on fire and keep distance. But yeah, I mean, in the arena, there's not anywhere really to go. So Utgard takes that with a very appropriately kitted lumber construct, I feel like. And then Xibalba committed somebody. I didn't even know. I feel like Xibalba's AI. And actually Relay might be AI as well. I don't know. No, probably not. Hard to say. The AI does like to do random kit. And then, yeah, they're just up against the scout. So, yeah, just a caster. I'm pretty sure he'll be able to beat a scout. But then again, you never know. Right, because yeah, he may not have the research, so he's just going to do every buff under the sun. And then you have flying shards, sure, slime, battle of the ages. Yeah, and then of course he fatigues himself out. So it's not inconceivable that the scout wins this, because I don't think this guy, well, actually he has some decent protection. He probably puts stone skin on himself. So my money's on the mage, but we don't need to watch this. So it looks like that's Joman that committed the scout, and there you go, the scout comes away with it. So I would have lost my money. And yeah, just the joys of the vanilla arena. And then let's see, we have Atlantis committing someone. I have a feeling Atlantis might also be AI at this point. Hard to say, like, yeah, an unkitted mage. This is also, I think, a capital only. Definitely looks like an expensive mage. My money's on the mage again, but we'll see from the report. See if Joman can come away with, no, Scout could not take on two different mages. And so then we have, I think this is going to be the lumber construct against a relatively powerful mage. So like, yeah, this is going to be dangerous for the lumber construct, depending on the level of research that Atlantis has. And of course, like, yeah, there you go, raise skeletons. So like skelly spam, pretty effective in the arena. Of course, like, yeah, he's putting quickness on the skeletons. That's kind of dangerous. Skeletons definitely struggling to deal any damage though, right? His protection is decent, but with no regeneration or anything like that, I just don't think he's quite killy enough. And even though this guy does put himself to sleep, well, if he keeps casting spells other than making skeletons, then it's possible that he dies. Does this guy have any cold resistance? No. But then again, no encumbrance, so he's not going to build up any fatigue. But yeah, I think the skeletons come away with this. Like, yeah, they will periodically do some chip damage. So again, we don't need to watch all this. Sorry for anyone who, wanted to see the result of that. But yeah, the lumber construct can't chop his way through all of those skeletons. And then looks like Marignon submitted someone as well, and they got kind of lucky because they didn't have to fight anybody in the lead up to it. And like, yeah, I think this is the winner from before. And so yeah, here's the champion's headband that he got from before. Like, a lot of this is not super useful on an assassin, although quickness is pretty nice and luck is good as well. But yeah, he's just got Pokemon items, and then of course what he got from the arena the last time. And like, yeah, I think he definitely wins this. This is a mage, but like the imps are just gonna stack up, and water elementals are pretty scary. Yeah, there he goes. And so yeah, Marignon wins another death match. Very cool. And then, of course, he gets the champion's helmet. So I don't even know how that works. Does it replace the previous champion item? Because he also got a helmet of some sort last time. So yeah, the arena is fun, but perhaps not the most well thought out feature of Dominions. And then it looks like we immediately catch that false prophet, which I'm very happy about, though he does kill some of our wolves, which is sad. And then we get the breach on Abyssia, so very happy about that. And then, of course, always the patrolling, and then we lose a hag from disease. We do kind of have old age problems as Vaettiheim, so something to consider anyway. And I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. The biggest news is that we are going to be storming here this turn, so we'll see. Pangea definitely has had time to prepare a defense, and they've done well defending their own capital. And we know that, their main army is actually in here, although it's going to be a little light in terms of mage support. Then again, Pangea does have some stealthy mages, and we don't know where some of his assassins have gone. I'm kind of surprised that we didn't get assassinated yet. Of course, assassinations happen before battles, so there might be a round of assassinations before this storm. He may be holding his assassins to try to assassinate the turn that we attack, to mess up our plan during the battle, and then cause us to lose the battle. Or his assassins are busy elsewhere, right? And we have killed some of them, definitely. So, we don't know how many Pangea has left. But anyway, we've talked about this army. The main difference now is we have brought up a bunch of these water ones, and they're going to be able to do Frozen Heart. They're not going to combine great with Rigor Mortis. Rigor Mortis combined with like so many living units. I don't know. It's a bit of a mixed bag. But we do have a lot of undead units as well as the ability to summon in a bunch of skeletons. So, we'll see how that works. And then, of course, we are still trying to catch this raiding group. I do think we are sending a lesser horror at it. Let's see, Snowford. This is Snowford, yeah. So we're going to send some lesser horrors at them and, see what the horrors do against them. And, of course, we have a variety of attempts to halt them, all of which have failed previously. But, we'll see. Eventually, we will get lucky. We're also moving up in like the core of what's going to be, our northern army here to try to defend this forest. Couldn't really afford much in the way of province defense, but Pangea also doesn't really have much in the way of units here. If they bring out like all their mages, that could be trouble for this group. We'll see. But this is still a decent amount of stuff. I think we'd have a fair chance of beating this mage stack out in the field, especially like, where they have no province defense or, really any units to speak of. And of course, there's a pretty good chance that, they're more worried about Pythium. We can see that there's a good number of stuff here. Wouldn't surprise me at all if this stuff, jumped on Pangea's capital again. So that covers the majority of the Pangean conflict. Otherwise, we are still trying to do some recruitment. Our capital recruitment and the recruitment that we have going on in this fort will join with this force up here eventually to form, a more serious army that could potentially threaten some of Pythium's holdings or be used in our upcoming war against Raga. Speaking of Raga, I think the screws are starting to tighten on them. We can see that this province that used to be Raga's is now controlled by Gath, so it looks like Gath has launched their war. I was very tempted to just start raiding immediately, but we're not quite ready, right? It's like, yeah, is this going to put us behind a little bit? Sure, but again, we're probably looking at fighting Gath in the not too distant future anyway. And since, I've already, diplomatically, it's already gone about as badly as it can, let's go ahead and, make sure that this is properly finished before we launch against Raga. This does mean that we'll be able to raid less, although it doesn't really seem like, I'm kind of surprised that Gath launched an attack just in one province. They share a fairly substantial border with Raga. They certainly could have hit more provinces, and we don't see any evidence of an army here. These passes are open, yeah, because there's heat here, so, maybe they're massing an army here, but I just figured it's moving through highlands is quite slow, right? And these are both highlands, so I was thinking, probably they're going to attack through here, but they have a lot of different options. It does look like Joman is looking to move in, probably. I know they were interested in joining against Raga, and, they have a force here on their border, and they don't have much of a border, so they do need to move in, fairly quickly, unless they border. No, I'm pretty sure they don't border anywhere else. Of course, Agartha, right, is fighting hard. They've done a really good job of packing their citadel with a bunch of siege defense, because it's a fairly large army that's been sitting here for, more than one turn. I think 2 turns, maybe 3 turns. And this fort is still not broken. They've also managed to put this fortification under siege, also not broken, so this was probably a thug or, a small raiding group. But still, they are fighting hard, and we can see that Utgard is making a good amount of progress. They've collapsed a lot of Raga's northern territory here. They've put this fort under siege, although also not cracked. So again, probably some of those scrawny thugs that we've seen. So we're going to continue to try to scout this, but yeah, I think this happens a lot with nations that have very powerful sacreds. You get that feeling of invincibility, and you don't really feel the need to tread lightly or make any friends. And in a large game like this, that will come back to bite you. I do think in a smaller game you can probably snowball out. I mean, even in a larger game you can definitely snowball out of control. That's part of Dominions. So I'm not saying that Raga's bad. That would be crazy. But in a large game, I do think careful management, of your diplomatic situation and, your perceived threat status is pretty important. And I don't think Raga, they didn't focus on that, which is fine. Play however you want to play. They certainly had a heck of a run, and they are a long way from done. I'm sure we haven't seen the Zayeden stack in a while, but we know that they have like several very powerful mundane stacks. We've seen a few other very powerful mundane stacks in various places in their empire, and they still have a lot of territory left. So they're a long way from out. But considering that, I think basically every single one of their neighbors is either already attacking them or planning on attacking them, that is going to be very difficult. And again, some of that cannot be helped, but like even on our border, right? Like Raga was very aggressive about grabbing territory, which is absolutely how you should play. That's not a bad thing to grab territory, but it's like then they came and offered us a non-aggression pact, right? After, a favorable bump, which I think in a lot of cases, like, sure, right? But only if you have, secure areas elsewhere. Because, like, would I want to fight Raga, one-on-one? Not really. But since I already knew that they essentially made enemies of all their other neighbors, I wasn't really too worried about the need for a non-aggression pact. And since they, they made no effort to be friendly, I didn't really feel, it's like I had no incentive to sign a non-aggression pact with them. So we'll see. Could be eating all these words in a few turns, right? As the Zayeden stack comes and dominates my armies. Entirely possible. But we are continuing to build up. Like we have, this is a Bakemono cave. I don't know if I've mentioned that, but now we're recruiting Bakemono. Not really sure if 16 is enough. These guys raid pretty well, although they do tend to attrit out, and like morale is definitely a problem for them. But this is just like one turn of recruitment for them. So we're going to try a couple of these like one turn of recruitments, and if they don't work out, then we'll switch over to 2 turns of recruitment, and I think that'll raid pretty darn well. Of course, they don't stealth when you recruit them in, so recruiting them on the border here is like a pretty obvious signal to Raga, right? It's like they keep seeing Bakemono appear and disappear in this province. So that's probably a good sign that those Bakemono are headed into your territory. Of course, they've already patrolled out one of our raiding groups, so like, yeah, there's no element of surprise here really, but I also don't think it's really strictly necessary in this case. Right, we can see that Raga has not retaliated whatsoever, right? It's not like they launched an attack against us because they patrolled out one of our raiding groups, and I think, it's because they're really busy. So we're going to continue to build and, push raiding groups deeper into that territory. We're going to mostly keep them out of Gath's territory, certainly at least their core territory, but we'll probably leave them in place in areas where they conquered Raga territory, which is a bit of a gray area, again, with the non-aggression pact, although, like I said, I'm not 100% sure that we even have one. I do think that they were agreeing to it, but it was kind of unclear. I could clarify it, but that brings us down to the Patala situation. So yeah, we've talked about this a good amount, and like we are moving forward with like the core of what will become our army, or I don't know if you can call it a core, the vanguard. The core of it is over here, and it is bringing more Bone Fiends in. This will probably be the last cast of Bone Fiends. Like I think we have enough stuff here. If we combine it, with what we have up here and like all the casting power that we have, and then also considering that Patala has been down to basically just their capital for a long time, I don't like 20 turns or something. So they're going to be in pretty rough shape. Of course, this army isn't just for Patala. It's also to, dissuade Gath and try to ensure that we get favorable borders. If Gath manages to lock down Patala's capital, which I think is, I don't know, this is a pretty powerful raiding force, but Patala has defeated several of Gath's armies. Well, at least one that we know of. I think probably one other. There's a good chance that, these ladies don't try to jump on top of the capital. So I did agree to give Gath this province, but I think the plan now is we will probably just move through it and then sit on top of Patala's capital and take it. And it will be connected to our territory, but it'll be pretty awkward. That said, if we manage to get our scales in, which will take some time, we will be able to freeze this river. But yeah, this is going to remain an awkward border. And like I said, we'll probably trigger a war between Gath and myself, but we're kind of interested in that at this point. So yeah, we'll see. Or, maybe Gath is building up a large army and will actually also take Patala's capital. In which case, again, we'll probably just use our army to build a fort down here, cover a fort construction. But then it will do the same thing, right? It'll just take Patala from Gath as part of like a wider war against Gath once the Raga situation has finished off. And I think that covers the majority of what we're doing from a war standpoint. Recruitment is starting to wind down a little bit. We're recruiting a bit more here in terms of troops. Mostly full mage recruitment. Let's see, this fort often, we're recruiting another one of these water mages. I'm really not sure how many of these guys to recruit. Like on the one hand, like this gift of water breathing and the fact that they're amphibian is like really, really useful. So in some sense, it's like, man, I want as many of these guys as possible. It's the only place that I can recruit them from. On the other hand, like we're not actually like that close. We don't have plans to go into the water just yet. And we know that like, maybe eventually we're gonna have to deal with a water power that may also go underwater in the larger lake. On the other hand, I think Relay's Dominion is pop kill, and they've held this lake for long enough that I don't think it's going to be very useful. So anyway, I'm really back and forth in terms of like how many of these guys to recruit. The other thing too, they're not sacred. They're not actually that expensive, but like water 2, we actually get a decent amount of water 2 with our own mages. These guys aren't stealthy anyway. Like a lot of pluses and minuses. So we are recruiting one there this turn, so that means that, more or less full mage recruitment, except notably in this fort, which perhaps just a bit of an oversight. This is the place that like we have our strongest force that we'll be pushing from, so in some sense it's like, well, we really want to recruit mages, especially since we might be taking some losses here. On the other hand, it's like we have to scroll this mage list. We already have a ton of mages here, so we're trying to build up, force mages for these other armies. So that is the mage that we cut this turn. Otherwise, most of the rest of these arrows are just, site searchers, this, that, and the other, various commanders, relieving birds of their patrol duties so that they are free to lead great eagles when we eventually get to them. Oops, that's not research. So speaking of research, it should be a couple turns and we'll have great eagles. And then, of course, Enchantment 7 is going to be useful for Serpent's Blessing so we don't poison ourselves. Also, we'll see. Patala, of course, uses a lot of poison, and there's a good chance that they have foul vapors. So we're going to want some decent nature mages, and we probably actually don't have enough. So let's see. So we may have to set up some kind of communion. This lady can move pretty far. I think she can make it to the waist, so she'll definitely join and do some poison ward, like that lower level poison resistance. A lot of this army, right, like these guys, the undead, and we have a ton of nature mages. Even though they're not very high level nature mages, they can at least take care of themselves from a poison resistance standpoint. But our crossbowmen and the berserkers, like they're definitely going to want poison resistance. The good news is we're size 1, so we pack in a lot tighter, so it's easier for us to use things like poison ward to get poison resistance on more of our units. But eventually, right, we do want Serpent's Blessing, so we don't have to worry about that. And again, that's mostly just so that we can use foul vapors ourselves and not have to worry too much about killing off our own units. From a forging standpoint, I don't think we have too much that's exciting. Forging a Bloodthorn with our Pretender. I did this turn relatively quickly because I was a bit late on it. And so I wouldn't say like a panicked, but I don't know. I didn't have a specific plan for him. We do need another one of these Bloodthorns. It could be forged by another one of our commanders, but our other Blood commander that could have forged it, she is moving up because we want her closer to the front because she's going to start summoning in devils, so I prefer not to do that here, partially because I think that would make Marignon and Satyr a bit nervous, right? Usually it's like where you're summoning in a bunch of troops, that's probably where you're going to be attacking, and that's not the case. And then of course the other thing too is, well, the reason that where you summon in troops is usually where you're going to be attacking is because then we would have to shuttle all these demons, across our entire empire. So she's going to move out and probably end up, I don't know, here or maybe Abyssia, assuming we take that. So anyway, that's what our Pretender is doing this turn. Otherwise, Frost Brands, right, for our Raiders, which we'll see about those raiding groups. Maybe at least we can use the Frost Brands with other Raiders if our current use for them doesn't really work out. And Water Bracelets, always useful, having boosters, especially because we have so many mages that can spam Frozen Heart. Some extra Alquills, never hurts to get some more research. And then Spell Focuses, that's just, for penetration. We have various Astral and Blood and Death and Nature spells, all of which benefit from extra penetration. So I think that more or less covers turn 44.